Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly attract everything they want while others struggle despite following the exact same manifestation techniques? What if I told you that the secret isn't in visualizing harder or writing more gratitude lists, but lies hidden in the quantum mechanics happening inside your brain right now? Tonight we're diving into the most controversial intersection of science and spirituality that researchers are desperately trying to understand. We're exploring whether manifestation is actually quantum entanglement of the mind, and the evidence is going to blow your mind. Before we begin, hit that like button and subscribe, because this journey will challenge everything you thought you knew about consciousness, reality, and the power of human intention. What we discover tonight could revolutionize how you approach every goal, every dream, and every desire you've ever had. Prepare yourselves. We begin. Picture this scenario. You're thinking about someone you haven't spoken to in years, really focusing on them, visualizing their face, remembering conversations you shared. Then your phone rings. It's them. Coincidence? Maybe. But what if I told you that quantum physicists have discovered particles that behave exactly like this on a subatomic level, instantly responding to each other across impossible distances with no apparent communication method? This isn't some new age fantasy. This is Einstein's spookiest nightmare come to life. The man who gave us relativity called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance, because it violated everything he believed about how the universe operates. Objects aren't supposed to influence each other instantly across space. Information can't travel faster than light, yet quantum entanglement does exactly that, and it's been proven in laboratories around the world thousands of times. But here's where it gets interesting for anyone who's ever tried to manifest their desires into reality. The quantum realm operates according to rules that sound suspiciously like the principles manifestation teachers have been describing for generations. Particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed. The act of measurement changes reality itself, and most importantly, consciousness appears to play a fundamental role in determining what becomes real. Now I know what you're thinking. We've all heard people try to use quantum physics to justify everything from crystal healing to psychic abilities. Most of the time, it's complete nonsense. Scientists get frustrated because quantum mechanics gets misrepresented and oversimplified to support ideas that have nothing to do with actual quantum theory. But what if there's something more here? What if the connection isn't pseudo-scientific wishful thinking, but rather a genuine overlap between how consciousness operates and how reality constructs itself at the most fundamental level? Let me be crystal clear about what we're exploring. We're not talking about magical thinking or abandoning scientific rigor. We're examining whether legitimate quantum mechanical principles might provide a framework for understanding how focused intention could influence physical reality. The implications are staggering, and they deserve serious investigation rather than dismissal or uncritical acceptance. The story begins with something called quantum superposition. In the quantum world, particles don't have definite properties until they're observed. An electron doesn't spin clockwise or counterclockwise. It spins both ways simultaneously until someone measures it. This isn't a limitation of our measuring instruments. This is how reality actually works at the smallest scales. Particles exist in what physicists call a superposition of all possible states until the moment of observation collapses them into a single definite state. Think about what this means. Reality at its most fundamental level is not fixed and predetermined. It's fluid, probabilistic, existing in a state of infinite potential until consciousness interacts with it through observation. Does this sound familiar to anyone who's studied manifestation techniques? The idea that reality exists in a state of potential until consciousness focuses on specific outcomes and collapses them into physical experience. But quantum superposition is just the beginning. The real game changer is quantum entanglement, and this is where things get genuinely mind-bending. When two particles become entangled, they form a single quantum system. Measuring one particle instantly determines the state of the other, regardless of how far apart they are. Change the spin of one particle, and its entangled partner changes immediately, even if it's on the other side of the universe. Albert Einstein hated this idea so much that he spent years trying to prove it wrong. He believed in what he called local realism, the idea that objects only influence things in their immediate vicinity and that they have definite properties independent of observation. Quantum entanglement violates both principles. Entangled particles influence each other across any distance, and their properties remain undefined until measured. Einstein was convinced that quantum mechanics was incomplete, that there must be hidden variables we hadn't discovered yet that would restore common sense to physics. He famously said, "God does not play dice with the universe," referring to the probabilistic nature of quantum mechanics. But God apparently does play dice, and those dice are loaded in ways that would make Einstein's head spin. In 1964, physicist John Bell developed a mathematical proof that became known as Bell's theorem. This theorem demonstrated that no physical theory based on local realism could reproduce all the predictions of quantum mechanics. Either particles can influence each other instantly across vast distances, or reality doesn't exist independently of observation. There's no middle ground. For decades, Bell's theorem remained theoretical. Then in the 1980s and 90s, experimental physicists began testing it directly. They created entangled particles, separated them by large distances, and measured their properties simultaneously. The results consistently violated Bell's inequalities, proving that quantum entanglement is real and that Einstein's local realism is wrong. These experiments earned physicists Alain Aspect, John Clauser, and Anton Zeilinger the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics. Their work definitively proved that the universe operates according to quantum mechanical principles that seem to defy common sense. Particles really do influence each other instantly across vast distances. Reality really is fundamentally probabilistic rather than deterministic. And observation really does play a crucial role in determining what becomes real. Now here's where manifestation enters the picture. Manifestation practices typically involve focusing consciousness on desired outcomes, visualizing them as already real, and maintaining that focused intention until the desired reality manifests in physical experience. Critics dismiss this as magical thinking with no scientific basis. But what if consciousness operates according to quantum mechanical principles? Consider the role of observation in quantum mechanics. The act of measurement doesn't just reveal pre-existing properties of particles, it actually creates those properties. Before measurement, particles exist in superposition, having all possible properties simultaneously. The observer's choice of what to measure determines which of those potential properties becomes real. This is formalized in quantum mechanics as the measurement problem. When and how does the quantum superposition of multiple states collapse into a single definite state? Most physicists avoid this question by focusing on the mathematical formalism rather than its interpretation. But some serious scientists have proposed that consciousness itself might be the key to understanding quantum state collapse. The idea isn't as fringe as you might expect. Physicists like Eugene Wigner and Henry Stapp have argued that consciousness plays a fundamental role in quantum mechanics. Wigner proposed that consciousness is what causes quantum state collapse, turning potential realities into actual experiences. Stapp developed this idea further, suggesting that conscious observation selects which possible future becomes the actual future. These aren't mystical speculations, they're attempts by serious scientists to solve real problems in quantum theory. The standard interpretation of quantum mechanics, called the Copenhagen interpretation, simply states that quantum systems exist in superposition until measured, without explaining why measurement causes state collapse or what constitutes a measurement. The consciousness-based interpretations provide a potential answer. Consciousness is what bridges the gap between quantum possibilities and classical reality. But does this mean manifestation is real? Not necessarily. The quantum realm operates at scales trillions of times smaller than anything in our everyday experience. Even if consciousness influences quantum systems, that doesn't automatically mean it can influence macroscopic reality. The transition from quantum to classical behavior remains one of the biggest unsolved problems in physics. This is where quantum entanglement becomes crucial. If consciousness can influence quantum systems, and if those systems can be entangled with macroscopic objects, then consciousness might be able to influence physical reality through quantum mechanical pathways. It's a long chain of reasoning with many links that could break, but it's not obviously impossible. Recent experiments have demonstrated quantum entanglement at increasingly large scales. Researchers have entangled molecules containing thousands of atoms, mechanical oscillators visible to the naked eye, and even collections of millions of particles. The boundary between quantum and classical behavior keeps getting pushed to larger and larger scales. Some researchers are now exploring whether biological systems might maintain quantum coherence and entanglement. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each containing trillions of molecules. If even a tiny fraction of these systems maintain quantum properties, the brain might be capable of quantum information processing on a massive scale. This brings us to a fascinating question. Could consciousness itself be a quantum phenomenon? Could the subjective experience of awareness emerge from quantum processes in the brain? And if so, could focused consciousness influence quantum systems beyond the brain through entanglement? These questions push us to the very edge of current scientific understanding. We're exploring territory where physics meets neuroscience meets philosophy of mind. The answers aren't clear yet, but the questions themselves are profound enough to warrant serious investigation. What we do know is that quantum entanglement is real, that consciousness plays some role in quantum measurement, and that the boundary between quantum and classical behavior is more fluid than previously thought. Whether this provides a scientific foundation for manifestation remains an open question, but it's a question worth asking with genuine scientific curiosity rather than premature dismissal. The implications extend far beyond personal manifestation practices. If consciousness can influence physical reality through quantum mechanical processes, it would revolutionize our understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. It would suggest that the universe is more participatory than we imagined, with consciousness playing an active role in creating reality rather than just observing it passively. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before we can answer these profound questions, we need to understand exactly how quantum entanglement works, what role consciousness plays in quantum mechanics, and whether the quantum realm can influence macroscopic reality in measurable ways. The journey we're about to take will challenge everything you think you know about the nature of reality itself. We'll explore experiments that seem to prove consciousness can influence matter, examine the mathematical framework that might make manifestation possible, and investigate why some Nobel Prize-winning physicists sound more like mystics than materialists. But first, we need to examine something that will fundamentally alter how you view reality itself. Hidden within the equations of quantum mechanics lies a mathematical framework that mirrors ancient wisdom traditions with startling precision. This isn't about forcing science to validate mystical beliefs. This is about discovering that the universe operates according to principles that mystics intuited thousands of years before physicists derived them mathematically. The mathematics of quantum entanglement reveal something extraordinary about the nature of information itself. When particles become entangled, they don't communicate in any conventional sense. There's no signal traveling between them, no energy transfer, no mechanism that classical physics can explain. Instead, they share what physicists call quantum information, a form of connection that exists outside our normal concepts of space and time. Here's what makes this revolutionary. Quantum information isn't bound by the speed of light. When you measure one entangled particle, its partner responds instantaneously, whether it's across the room or across the galaxy. This violates everything we thought we knew about causality and suggests that reality operates according to non-local principles that transcend physical distance. Now consider how manifestation practitioners describe their techniques. They speak of connecting with desired outcomes as if they already exist, of collapsing the distance between current reality and intended reality through focused consciousness. They describe a process where clear intention creates immediate connection with desired results, even when those results seem physically distant or unlikely. The mathematical framework of quantum mechanics describes exactly this type of non-local connection. The wave function, which represents all possible states of a quantum system, extends throughout space until observation collapses it into a single definite outcome. This collapse happens instantaneously across the entire wave function, regardless of its spatial extent. But here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. The wave function collapse doesn't just happen randomly, It happens in response to measurement, and measurement requires some form of interaction with a conscious observer or measuring device. This suggests that consciousness, or at least the process of gaining information, plays a fundamental role in determining which possible reality becomes actual reality. Physicist John Wheeler, one of the giants of 20th century physics, proposed something called the participatory universe. In Wheeler's view, observers aren't passive recipients of information about pre-existing reality. Instead, observers participate in creating reality through the very act of observation. We don't just discover what's real, we help determine what becomes real. Wheeler's ideas emerged from his work on quantum mechanics and relativity, but they sound remarkably similar to what manifestation teachers have claimed for generations. The observer isn't separate from the observed. Consciousness isn't isolated from the physical world. Instead, there's a dynamic interaction between awareness and reality that continuously shapes what exists. This participatory view of reality receives support from some of the most rigorous experiments in physics. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments demonstrate that decisions made by observers in the present can retroactively determine what happened in the past. Particles behave as if they knew how they would be observed later, even when that observation occurs after they've already been detected. These experiments shatter our normal concepts of cause and effect. If present observations can influence past events, then the relationship between consciousness and reality is far stranger than we imagined. Time itself becomes participatory, with conscious choices rippling both forward and backward through the fabric of space-time. Now imagine applying this understanding to manifestation practices. If consciousness can influence quantum systems, and if those influences can propagate non-locally and even retroactively, then focused intention might genuinely alter the probability of desired outcomes manifesting in physical reality. The key word here is probability. Quantum mechanics doesn't predict definite outcomes. It predicts the probability of different outcomes occurring when measurements are made. The wave function assigns probability amplitudes to all possible states of a system, and these probabilities determine how likely each outcome is when the system is observed. But here's the crucial insight. These aren't probabilities based on our ignorance of hidden variables. They're fundamental features of reality itself. The universe actually operates probabilistically at its deepest level. This means there's genuine uncertainty built into the fabric of existence, uncertainty that conscious observation helps resolve into definite experiences. Manifestation practices might work by influencing these quantum probabilities. Focused intention could bias the probability distributions toward desired outcomes, making positive results more likely to manifest when the quantum wave functions collapse into classical reality. This wouldn't guarantee specific results, but it could significantly increase their probability of occurring. The mathematics support this possibility. Quantum field theory, the most successful physical theory ever developed, describes reality as arising from fields of possibility that extend throughout space and time. These fields fluctuate constantly, creating and destroying virtual particles, generating the zero-point energy that fills empty space and providing the substrate from which all physical phenomena emerge. Consciousness might interact with these quantum fields in ways we're only beginning to understand. If awareness operates through quantum processes, and if those processes can influence the probability amplitudes of quantum field fluctuations, then consciousness could literally tune the universe toward desired outcomes. Recent research in quantum biology suggests that biological systems do indeed exploit quantum effects for enhanced performance. Photosynthesis appears to use quantum superposition to explore multiple energy pathways simultaneously, selecting the most efficient route for converting light into chemical energy. Bird navigation relies on quantum entanglement in specialized proteins that detect magnetic fields. Even our sense of smell might depend on quantum tunneling effects that allow olfactory receptors to distinguish between different molecular vibrations. These discoveries reveal that quantum effects aren't confined to sterile physics laboratories. They operate within living systems, including potentially within the human brain. The warm, wet, noisy environment of biological tissue was once thought to destroy quantum coherence instantly. But life appears to have found ways to maintain and exploit quantum effects even under these challenging conditions. The human brain processes information through networks of neurons, but each neuron contains microtubules, protein structures that some researchers believe might support quantum computation. If these microtubules maintain quantum coherence, the brain could perform quantum information processing on a massive scale, potentially creating connections with quantum fields that extend throughout space. This is where consciousness meets quantum mechanics in ways that could revolutionize our understanding of both. If consciousness emerges from quantum processes in the brain, and if those processes can entangle with quantum systems beyond the brain, then focused awareness might genuinely influence physical reality through quantum mechanical pathways. The evidence for this possibility comes from multiple directions. Experiments in psychokinesis, though controversial, have shown statistical effects that persist across decades of research. Random number generators appear to respond to the intentions of nearby observers. Global consciousness projects detect correlations between world events and the outputs of quantum random event generators distributed around the planet. None of these effects are large or reliable enough to constitute proof, but they're consistent enough to suggest that something genuine might be occurring. If consciousness can influence quantum systems even weakly, those small effects could amplify through the complex dynamics of chaotic systems, potentially producing macroscopic changes that manifest as seemingly improbable synchronicities. The butterfly effect demonstrates how tiny changes in initial conditions can produce enormous differences in final outcomes. If consciousness can nudge quantum probabilities even slightly, those nudges could cascade through the intricate web of cause and effect that shapes our experienced reality. Desired outcomes that seemed astronomically unlikely could become surprisingly probable through the accumulation of countless quantum influences. This brings us to the heart of the manifestation question. The universe appears to be fundamentally participatory, with consciousness playing an active role in determining which possibilities become actualized. Quantum entanglement provides a mechanism for non-local influence that transcends ordinary concepts of space and time. And the probabilistic nature of quantum mechanics offers a pathway through which focused intention could influence the likelihood of desired outcomes. But the story becomes even stranger when we examine what happens at the intersection of quantum mechanics and information theory. Information, it turns out, might be more fundamental than matter and energy. Some physicists now propose that reality consists entirely of information processing, with particles and forces emerging as patterns in the flow of quantum information through space and time. If consciousness is fundamentally about information processing, and if reality consists of information patterns, then consciousness and reality might be more intimately connected than we ever imagined. The boundary between observer and observed dissolves into a participatory dance of information exchange that continuously creates the world we experience. This information-based view of reality suggests that manifestation might work through what we could call consciousness-information interfaces. Focused intention could encode desired outcomes as information patterns that propagate through the quantum information field, influencing the probability structures that determine which possibilities manifest in physical experience. The implications stretch far beyond personal manifestation. If consciousness can influence reality through quantum information processes, it suggests that collective consciousness might shape global events through similar mechanisms. The thoughts, intentions, and emotional states of large groups could create coherent information patterns that influence everything from weather systems to economic markets to social movements. Recent studies of global consciousness suggest this might already be happening. The Global Consciousness Project monitors random number generators around the world and has detected significant deviations from randomness during major global events. When millions of people focus their attention on the same event, whether tragic or celebratory, the quantum noise that these generators monitor becomes less random, as if collective consciousness creates order in the quantum foam. These findings hint at something profound about the relationship between individual consciousness and collective reality. We might not be isolated observers of an independent physical world. Instead, we might be participants in a vast, interconnected information system that continuously weaves our shared reality from the quantum threads of possibility. But we're still missing crucial pieces of this cosmic puzzle. How exactly does consciousness interface with quantum systems? What mechanisms allow non-local influence to propagate across space and time? And most importantly, can these processes be understood well enough to develop reliable methods for conscious reality creation? The answers to these questions will determine whether manifestation represents genuine quantum mechanical phenomena or simply the result of cognitive biases and selective attention. The stakes couldn't be higher, because if consciousness really can influence reality through quantum processes, it would transform our understanding of human potential and our role in shaping the world around us. The quantum realm operates according to rules that seem designed to confuse anyone who grew up believing in solid, predictable reality. But there's one aspect of quantum mechanics that pushes the boundaries of the impossible even further than entanglement. It's called quantum tunneling, and it reveals something extraordinary about how consciousness might navigate the landscape of possibility itself. Picture a ball rolling toward a hill that's too tall for it to climb over. In our everyday world, that ball stops at the base of the hill, lacking the energy to reach the top. But in the quantum world, particles routinely pass through energy barriers that should be impossible to cross. They don't go over the barrier or around it. They literally tunnel through it, appearing on the other side as if the barrier never existed. This isn't some theoretical curiosity. Quantum tunneling powers the fusion reactions in stars, enables the scanning tunneling microscopes that image individual atoms, and makes possible the electronic devices you're using to watch this video. Every second, trillions of particles tunnel through barriers they shouldn't be able to cross, defying our classical intuitions about what's possible. Now here's where this becomes relevant to manifestation. What if consciousness operates through similar tunneling mechanisms? What if focused intention allows awareness to tunnel through the probability barriers that separate current reality from desired outcomes? Instead of having to climb over the mountain of unlikely circumstances, consciousness might tunnel directly through to the desired result. The mathematics of quantum tunneling depend on wave functions, the same mathematical objects that describe particle superposition and entanglement. When a particle encounters a barrier, its wave function doesn't stop abruptly. Instead, it penetrates into the barrier region, decreasing exponentially, but never reaching absolute zero. This means there's always some probability, however small, that the particle will appear on the other side. Manifestation practitioners often describe their techniques in remarkably similar terms. They speak of maintaining unwavering focus on desired outcomes despite apparent obstacles, of holding the vision so clearly that external circumstances become irrelevant. They describe a process where persistence of intention eventually leads to breakthrough, as if consciousness tunnels through the barriers of probability to reach the desired reality. But quantum tunneling reveals something even more extraordinary about the nature of time and causality. Experiments have shown that tunneling appears to occur instantaneously, regardless of the barrier width. A particle tunneling through a thin barrier and one tunneling through a thick barrier both emerge at exactly the same time, as if the tunneling process exists outside normal temporal flow. This instantaneous aspect of quantum tunneling mirrors what manifestation practitioners call collapse time, the phenomenon where desired outcomes manifest with seemingly impossible speed once certain threshold conditions are met. Years of gradual progress suddenly compress into moments of dramatic transformation, as if time itself becomes fluid when consciousness achieves sufficient coherence and focus. The implications extend far beyond individual manifestation experiences. If consciousness can tunnel through probability barriers, it might explain how revolutionary breakthroughs occur in science, art, and human development. Great discoveries often emerge not through incremental progress, but through sudden leaps that seem to bypass the normal stages of development entirely. Consider how scientific revolutions unfold. Researchers work within existing paradigms for decades, accumulating evidence and refining theories. Then suddenly, someone makes a conceptual leap that transforms the entire field. The breakthrough doesn't emerge gradually from previous work. It tunnels through the conceptual barriers that kept others trapped in old ways of thinking. The same pattern appears in artistic creativity, spiritual awakening, and personal transformation. Progress occurs not through steady linear advancement but through quantum leaps that bypass the expected stages of development. Consciousness appears to tunnel through the probability barriers that separate one level of understanding from another. Recent experiments in quantum mechanics have revealed something even stranger about the relationship between observation and reality. Scientists have discovered that quantum systems can exhibit what's called quantum steering, where measurements on one part of an entangled system can influence the properties available for measurement on the distant partner. This goes beyond simple entanglement correlations. Quantum steering means that the choices made by one observer can literally steer the reality experienced by another observer, even when they're separated by vast distances. The act of measurement doesn't just reveal properties, it actively shapes what properties are available to be revealed elsewhere in the system. Imagine if consciousness operates through similar steering mechanisms. Your focused intention on desired outcomes might not just influence your own probability landscape, it might actually steer the reality experienced by others in your entangled network, making them more likely to take actions that support your manifestation. The boundaries between individual consciousness and collective reality become fluid when quantum steering effects are considered. This raises profound questions about free will and personal responsibility. If consciousness can steer quantum systems across space and time, then our choices might influence not just our own experiences, but the experiences of everyone connected to us through quantum information networks. The thoughts you think, the intentions you hold, the emotional states you maintain, could ripple out through quantum channels to influence the probability structures experienced by countless others. The mathematics of quantum field theory provide a framework for understanding how these influences might propagate. Reality emerges from quantum fields that fluctuate throughout space and time. These fluctuations create virtual particles that pop into existence and vanish again, generating the zero-point energy that fills supposedly empty space. But these fluctuations aren't random. They respond to boundary conditions and initial states in ways that can amplify small influences into macroscopic effects. If consciousness interfaces with quantum fields through some form of biofield interaction, then focused intention might modulate these field fluctuations in ways that cascade into physical manifestations. The process wouldn't violate any physical laws, but it would operate through mechanisms so subtle and complex that they remain invisible to conventional scientific investigation. Recent research in quantum biology has revealed that living systems routinely exploit quantum effects for enhanced functionality. Plants use quantum superposition to explore multiple photosynthetic pathways simultaneously. Birds navigate using quantum entanglement in their visual systems. Even our sense of smell might depend on quantum tunneling effects that allow molecules to trigger specific receptor responses. These discoveries suggest that biological systems have evolved sophisticated mechanisms for maintaining and exploiting quantum coherence, even in the warm, noisy environment of living tissue. The human brain, with its 86 billion neurons and trillions of synaptic connections, represents the most complex quantum system we know of. If even a tiny fraction of this neural network maintains quantum properties, the information processing capabilities would be extraordinary. Some researchers propose that consciousness itself emerges from quantum processes in microtubules, protein structures within neurons that might support quantum computation. These microtubules form vast networks throughout the brain, potentially creating a quantum computational substrate that operates alongside classical neural processing. If this quantum substrate can entangle with external quantum systems, consciousness might literally extend beyond the boundaries of the brain. This extended consciousness model offers a potential. Focused intention could create mechanism for manifestation effects, coherent quantum states within the brain's microtubule networks. These coherent states could then entangle with quantum systems in the environment, influencing probability distributions in ways that increase the likelihood of desired outcomes manifesting in physical reality. The process wouldn't guarantee specific results, but it could significantly bias probability structures toward favorable outcomes. Like a quantum gambler who subtly influences the dice, consciousness might tip the scales of chance in directions that support its time, these small focused intentions. Over-probability shifts could accumulate into dramatic life changes that appear miraculous from a classical perspective. But the story becomes even more intriguing when we consider the role of time in quantum mechanics. Recent experiments have demonstrated that quantum effects can propagate backward through time under certain conditions. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments show that decisions made in the present can retroactively influence events that occurred in the past. If consciousness can access these retrocausal quantum effects, then manifestation might work by reaching backward through time to influence the initial conditions that led to current circumstances. The linear arrow of time that dominates our everyday experience might be more flexible than we realize, allowing consciousness to participate in creating its own past through quantum mechanical time loops. This temporal flexibility of quantum mechanics suggests that manifestation techniques might work through what we could call retroactive causation. Present intentions could propagate backward to influence past probability choices, creating timeline convergences where desired outcomes become increasingly likely to manifest in the apparent future. The cause-effect relationships we take for granted dissolve into participatory loops where consciousness helps create the very conditions it responds to. The implications challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of reality. If consciousness can influence quantum systems across space and time, then the universe operates more like an interactive information system than a mechanical clockwork. We're not passive observers of predetermined events, but active participants in an ongoing creation process that continuously weaves reality from quantum threads of possibility. Recent developments in quantum information theory support this participatory view of reality. Some physicists now propose that information, rather than matter or energy, might be the fundamental constituent of reality. In this information-based worldview, particles and forces emerge as patterns in the flow of quantum information through space-time networks. If consciousness is fundamentally about information processing, and if reality consists of information patterns, then the boundary between observer and observed becomes meaningless. Consciousness doesn't exist separate from reality, observing it from the outside. Instead, consciousness represents reality becoming aware of itself through localized information processing centers we call brains. This perspective transforms manifestation from a mystical process into a natural consequence of reality's information processing nature. Focused intention creates coherent information patterns within consciousness, and these patterns propagate through quantum information networks to influence the probability structures that determine which possibilities become actualized experiences. The process operates through what information theorists call quantum error correction, mechanisms that maintain information coherence despite environmental noise and decoherence effects. Biological systems appear to have evolved sophisticated quantum error correction protocols that allow them to maintain coherent quantum states much longer than physics textbooks suggest should be possible. If human consciousness utilizes similar quantum error correction mechanisms, it might be capable of maintaining coherent intentional states that persist long enough to influence macroscopic reality through accumulated quantum effects. The key would be developing the mental discipline to maintain coherent focus despite the constant noise and distraction of ordinary awareness. Ancient meditation traditions seem to have intuited these requirements thousands of years before quantum mechanics was discovered. They developed sophisticated practices for stabilizing attention, maintaining single-pointed focus, and accessing states of consciousness that transcend ordinary mental activity. These practices might represent early technologies for optimizing consciousness quantum field interactions. Modern neuroscience is beginning to validate some of these ancient insights. Brain imaging studies of experienced meditators reveal dramatic changes in neural network organization, including enhanced coherence between different brain regions and increased synchronization of neural oscillations. These coherence effects might reflect the development of quantum computational capabilities within the brain's microtubule networks. The convergence of ancient wisdom and quantum physics suggests that manifestation techniques might work by training consciousness to achieve and maintain quantum coherent states that can influence probability structures throughout space-time. The more coherent the intentional focus, the stronger the quantum field effects, the more persistent the practice, the more reliable the manifestation results. But achieving genuine quantum coherence in consciousness requires more than just positive thinking or wishful visualization. It demands the kind of mental discipline that comes from years of dedicated practice, the ability to maintain unwavering focus despite internal and external distractions, and the wisdom to align personal intentions with the deeper patterns of natural law. This brings us to a crucial distinction between authentic manifestation practices and the oversimplified versions that dominate popular culture. True manifestation isn't about demanding that reality conform to ego-driven desires. It's about learning to participate consciously in the quantum processes that continuously create reality, aligning personal intention with the universe's natural tendency toward increasing complexity, beauty, and consciousness. The universe appears to have an inherent direction, what some physicists call the arrow of complexity. Over billions of years, reality has evolved from simple particles to atoms to molecules to cells to organisms to consciousness to self-awareness. This evolutionary process seems to favor configurations that support greater information processing, more sophisticated forms of organization, and higher levels of conscious awareness. Manifestation techniques that align with this evolutionary direction might tap into quantum currents that naturally flow toward increased complexity and consciousness. Intentions that support personal growth, creative expression, healing, and service to others might find themselves supported by quantum field effects that favor evolutionary advancement. Conversely, intentions driven by fear, greed, or the desire to control others might encounter quantum resistance as they work against the universe's natural evolutionary flow. The quantum field might be inherently biased toward manifestations that serve the greater good, supporting individual desires only when they align with collective evolution. This suggests that successful manifestation requires not just quantum mechanical understanding but also ethical wisdom. The same consciousness that can influence quantum fields through focused intention must also develop the maturity to use this influence responsibly. With great power comes great responsibility, as they say, and the power to influence reality through quantum consciousness effects might represent the ultimate test of human moral development. As we stand at the threshold of potentially understanding how consciousness interfaces with quantum reality, we face choices that could determine the future of human evolution itself. Will we develop these capabilities with wisdom and compassion, using them to create a more beautiful and harmonious world, or will we allow ego-driven desires to corrupt our relationship with the quantum foundations of reality? The answer to these questions lies not just in our laboratories and theories, but in our hearts and intentions. The universe appears to be listening, responding to the quality of consciousness we bring to our interactions with quantum fields. What we choose to manifest, and why we choose to manifest it, might determine whether we evolve into conscious co-creators of reality or remain trapped in the illusion of separation from the quantum source that gives birth to all experience. The quantum implications of consciousness extend into territories that make even seasoned physicists uncomfortable. Recent experiments at the University of California have demonstrated something that challenges our fundamental understanding of how information flows through reality. They've created quantum systems where the act of future measurement appears to influence past events, not just correlatively but causally. The implications for manifestation are staggering. Here's what they discovered. When quantum particles are prepared in specific entangled states, decisions made about how to measure them in the future actually determine their historical properties retroactively. It's as if the particles reach forward through time to discover how they will be observed, then adjust their past behavior accordingly. The timeline isn't fixed, it's participatory. Now imagine applying this to human consciousness and manifestation practices. If awareness operates through quantum mechanisms, then the intentions you hold today might literally reach backward through time to influence the chain of events that led to your current circumstances. Your future-focused intention could retroactively adjust past probability choices, creating convergent timelines where desired outcomes become increasingly inevitable. This isn't science fiction speculation. This is extrapolation from verified experimental results that have been replicated in laboratories worldwide. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments demonstrate beyond doubt that future decisions can influence past events in quantum systems. The only question is whether consciousness participates in these retrocausal effects at macroscopic scales. But the story becomes even stranger when we examine what physicists call quantum discord, a form of quantum correlation that's distinct from entanglement but potentially even more powerful. Unlike entanglement, which requires special preparation procedures, quantum discord appears naturally in almost all quantum systems. It represents a fundamental form of quantum information sharing that pervades reality at every scale. Recent research suggests that quantum discord might be the mechanism through which quantum effects scale up from microscopic to macroscopic systems. While individual quantum correlations are fragile and easily destroyed by environmental noise, quantum discord can persist even in warm, noisy biological systems. This could be the missing link that allows consciousness to influence physical reality through quantum channels. The mathematics of quantum discord reveal something extraordinary about the nature of correlation itself. Classical correlations require direct causal connections between systems. If two coins always land on the same side, there must be some physical mechanism linking their behavior. But quantum discord creates correlations without requiring any direct interaction between systems. The correlation exists in the information structure itself, independent of physical causation. This suggests that consciousness might influence reality not through direct causal mechanisms, but through quantum information correlations that exist outside ordinary space and time. Your focused intention doesn't push physical events toward desired outcomes. Instead, it creates quantum information patterns that correlate with those outcomes across the probability landscape of space-time. Think of it like tuning a radio. You're not creating the radio waves, but by adjusting your receiver to specific frequencies, you select which signals become audible. Similarly, consciousness might not create reality directly, but by achieving specific quantum coherent states, it selects which possibilities from the quantum field become manifest experiences. The key insight is that information precedes manifestation. Before any physical event occurs, its information pattern must already exist within the quantum field structures that underlie reality. Consciousness might work by resonating with these pre-existing information patterns, amplifying their probability of physical actualization through quantum correlation mechanisms. This resonance model explains why manifestation practices emphasize emotional alignment and feeling states rather than just intellectual visualization. Emotions might represent the consciousness interface with quantum field information. When you genuinely feel as if your desired outcome has already occurred, you might be achieving quantum resonance with the information pattern of that outcome within the field structure of possibilities. Recent experiments in quantum biology support this resonance model. Researchers have discovered that biological systems use quantum coherence to sample multiple solution pathways simultaneously, then collapse into the most efficient option. Plants achieve nearly 100% efficiency in photosynthesis by quantum mechanically exploring all possible energy pathways before selecting the optimal route. The human brain might operate through similar quantum sampling mechanisms. Instead of thinking through problems sequentially, consciousness might simultaneously explore multiple solution pathways through quantum superposition, then collapse into the most resonant option. This could explain how intuitive insights arise suddenly, fully formed, as if downloaded from a quantum information database. But here's where the manifestation connection becomes profound. If consciousness can quantum sample multiple reality pathways, then focused intention might bias this sampling process toward desired outcomes. By maintaining clear intention and emotional alignment, you create quantum selection pressure that favors pathways leading to your intended results. The process works through what quantum theorists call environmental selection. Just as natural selection favors organisms best adapted to their environment, quantum selection might favor possibilities that best match the information patterns generated by coherent consciousness. The universe doesn't grant wishes, but it might naturally amplify intentions that achieve sufficient quantum coherence. This environmental selection model explains why manifestation seems to work through synchronicity and opportunity rather than through direct miraculous materialization. Quantum selection doesn't override physical laws, but it influences which lawful possibilities become actualized. Doors open, people appear, resources become available, all through natural processes that have been quantum mechanically biased towards supporting your coherent intentions. The timing element becomes crucial here. Quantum systems exist in superposition until measurement collapses them into definite states, but the timing of this collapse isn't arbitrary. It depends on the information processing requirements of the system and the coherent state of any observing consciousness. By maintaining stable intentional focus, you might be able to delay quantum state collapse until conditions align optimally for desired outcomes. Ancient meditation traditions seem to have intuited this timing principle. They developed practices for entering states of consciousness that exist outside ordinary temporal flow, what they called the eternal now or timeless awareness. These states might represent optimal conditions for interfacing with quantum superposition, allowing consciousness to participate in reality creation before quantum possibilities collapse into fixed experiences. Modern neuroscience is beginning to validate these ancient insights. Brain imaging studies reveal that experienced meditators can achieve neural states characterized by global coherence, where different brain regions synchronize their activity into unified information processing patterns. These coherent states correlate with subjective reports of expanded awareness and transcendent experiences. If the brain operates as a quantum information processing system, then these coherent states might represent optimal conditions for consciousness quantum field interaction. Global neural coherence could translate into quantum coherence at the level of microtubule networks, creating extended quantum correlation patterns that reach beyond the boundaries of the individual brain. Recent experiments have demonstrated that quantum correlations can extend across macroscopic distances when systems achieve sufficient coherence. Researchers have created entangled states involving billions of particles, maintaining quantum correlations across laboratory-scale distances despite environmental noise and decoherence effects. The key is achieving collective coherence where all particles act as a unified quantum system. If human consciousness can achieve similar collective coherence, either within individual brains or across groups of people, it might be capable of generating quantum correlation fields that extend throughout local space. These fields could influence probability structures across wide areas, making synchronized manifestations more likely for everyone within the coherence field. This collective coherence model offers a potential explanation for group manifestation effects and mass consciousness phenomena. When large numbers of people focus on similar intentions simultaneously, their individual quantum coherent states might combine into collective fields that amplify manifestation effects beyond what any individual could achieve alone. The Global Consciousness Project provides evidence supporting this collective coherence hypothesis. Random number generators distributed worldwide show significant deviations from randomness during major global events when millions of people focus their attention simultaneously. The quantum noise that these generators monitor becomes more ordered, as if collective consciousness creates coherence in the quantum vacuum itself. But collective coherence also raises profound questions about individual autonomy and free will. If consciousness operates through quantum fields that extend beyond individual brains, then our thoughts and intentions might be more interconnected than we realize. The boundary between self and other becomes fluid when quantum correlation effects are considered. This interconnectedness could explain why manifestation practices often emphasize service to others and alignment with collective good. Intentions that support only individual desires might encounter quantum interference from the broader consciousness field, while intentions that serve the greater good might find themselves amplified by collective resonance effects. Recent research in quantum information theory reveals that information cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed from one pattern to another. This conservation of information principle might apply to consciousness and manifestation in ways that fundamentally alter how we understand personal responsibility and ethical action. If the information patterns generated by your consciousness are conserved within quantum field structures, then every thought, intention, and emotional state you create becomes part of the permanent information content of reality. These patterns don't disappear when you stop thinking about them. They persist as probability bias within the quantum fields that continuously generate new experiences. This information persistence means that manifestation might work cumulatively over extended time periods. Each moment of focused intention adds information to the quantum field patterns associated with desired outcomes. Over time, these accumulated information patterns could reach threshold levels where manifestation becomes highly probable, even inevitable. The process resembles how crystals grow from solution. Individual molecules in the solution don't create crystals instantly, but they establish information patterns that bias future molecular arrangements toward crystalline structures. Eventually, enough information accumulates that crystal formation becomes spontaneous and rapid. Similarly, consciousness might seed quantum fields with information patterns that gradually bias reality toward desired configurations. The manifestation doesn't occur immediately, but the information foundations are established that make future manifestation increasingly likely as conditions align appropriately. This gradual accumulation model explains why manifestation practitioners emphasize consistency and persistence over immediate results. Each practice session adds quantum information to the field structures associated with intended outcomes. The effects might not be immediately visible, but they create probability momentum that eventually reaches manifestation threshold. Recent experiments in quantum mechanics have revealed something extraordinary about the relationship between information and energy. Information patterns can store and release energy in ways that transcend classical thermodynamic limitations. Quantum information systems can operate with efficiencies that approach 100%, extracting usable work from information structures with minimal energy loss. If consciousness operates through quantum information mechanisms, it might be capable of channeling vast amounts of energy through relatively small information inputs. Focused intention could access energy reservoirs within the quantum vacuum, directing this energy toward manifestation outcomes through information pattern resonance. The quantum vacuum contains enormous amounts of zero-point energy, fluctuations that create and annihilate virtual particles throughout empty space. This vacuum energy is usually inaccessible to classical systems, but quantum information processes might be able to tap into these reserves through resonance effects that coherently organize vacuum fluctuations. Manifestation might work by creating information patterns that resonate with vacuum energy fluctuations, extracting real energy from virtual processes through quantum coherence effects. This extracted energy could then influence physical systems toward desired configurations, making manifestation outcomes more energetically favorable than random alternatives. The process wouldn't violate conservation laws, but it would access energy sources that remain invisible to classical physics. Just as photosynthesis extracts energy from sunlight through quantum coherence effects, consciousness might extract energy from vacuum fluctuations through information resonance mechanisms. But accessing vacuum energy through consciousness would require extraordinary levels of mental coherence and stability. The quantum vacuum operates at time and energy scales far removed from ordinary conscious awareness. Interfacing with vacuum processes might demand states of consciousness that transcend normal human experience entirely. Ancient spiritual traditions describe such transcendent states, conditions of awareness characterized by complete stillness, infinite expansion, and unity with fundamental reality. These descriptions might represent phenomenological accounts of consciousness achieving resonance with quantum vacuum processes, accessing the zero-point energy that underlies all physical manifestation. Modern physics is beginning to validate some aspects of these ancient descriptions. Quantum field theory reveals that vacuum fluctuations exhibit characteristics remarkably similar to what mystics have described as the creative void or pregnant emptiness from which all experiences arise. The mathematical structure of the quantum vacuum mirrors the paradoxical descriptions found in mystical literature across cultures and centuries. This convergence between ancient wisdom and quantum physics suggests that manifestation practices might represent recovered technologies for consciousness. Vacuum interaction, methods for accessing the quantum foundations of reality that indigenous traditions preserved through oral transmission across thousands of years. If this interpretation is correct, then learning to manifest effectively might require more than just understanding quantum mechanics or practicing visualization techniques. It might demand the kind of profound consciousness transformation that traditional spiritual paths were designed to facilitate, the development of awareness capable of functioning at quantum scales of reality. The implications extend far beyond personal manifestation into questions about the ultimate nature of consciousness itself. If awareness can interface with quantum vacuum processes, then consciousness might be more fundamental than previously imagined, not just an emergent property of complex brains, but a basic feature of reality that participates in the continuous creation of physical existence. Recent theoretical work in quantum gravity supports this consciousness fundamental hypothesis. Some models propose that space-time itself emerges from more basic information processing networks, quantum computational structures that weave the fabric of reality from pure information relationships. Consciousness might represent localized intensifications within these cosmic information networks, focal points where the universe becomes aware of itself. From this perspective, manifestation becomes not just possible but inevitable. If consciousness represents reality's self-awareness mechanism, then focused intention naturally influences the information processing that creates physical experience. The universe doesn't respond to consciousness from outside itself. Consciousness is how the universe responds to itself from within its own creative process. But this fundamental view of consciousness carries profound implications for how we understand personal identity and individual existence. If awareness represents universal self-recognition rather than separate individual minds, then the boundaries between self and cosmos dissolve into participatory unity. Personal manifestation becomes cosmic self-creation. Individual intention becomes universal creativity expressing itself through localized focal points. The question is no longer whether manifestation works through quantum mechanisms, but whether we're prepared for what it means if it does. The answer could transform not just our understanding of consciousness and reality, but our entire conception of what it means to be human in a quantum universe where thoughts become things and intentions shape the very foundations of existence. The mathematics that describe quantum vacuum interactions reveal something that should fundamentally alter how you understand the relationship between mind and reality. When physicists calculate the energy density of empty space, they discover that what we call nothingness contains more potential energy than all the matter in the observable universe. This isn't theoretical speculation. This is the measured reality of quantum field fluctuations that create and destroy virtual particles billions of times per second in every cubic inch of space. Now here's what makes this relevant to manifestation. These vacuum fluctuations aren't random noise. They respond to information patterns in ways that mirror how consciousness organizes experience. When quantum systems achieve sufficient coherence, they can bias these fluctuations toward specific outcomes, essentially mining energy from the vacuum to support desired configurations of reality. Recent experiments have demonstrated this vacuum energy extraction in laboratory settings. Researchers have created what they call squeezed vacuum states, where quantum fluctuations become ordered rather than random, allowing energy extraction that approaches theoretical limits. The process requires exquisite control over quantum information patterns, but it proves that consciousness-like information processing can indeed access energy reservoirs hidden within apparent emptiness. If human consciousness operates through quantum coherence mechanisms, it might be capable of similar vacuum energy interactions. The focused intention states described in manifestation practices could represent naturally occurring squeezed vacuum conditions, where coherent awareness organizes quantum fluctuations to support desired outcomes through energy extraction from the zero-point field. But accessing vacuum energy through consciousness would require levels of mental stability that push human potential to its absolute limits. The quantum vacuum operates at timescales measured in tiny fractions of seconds and energy scales that dwarf anything in ordinary experience. Interfacing with these processes would demand consciousness states that remain perfectly coherent despite the constant turbulence of normal mental activity. This brings us to something that might revolutionize how we understand both consciousness and manifestation. Recent discoveries in quantum biology reveal that living systems routinely achieve and maintain quantum coherent states that shouldn't be possible according to classical physics. The warm, wet, noisy environment of biological tissue was supposed to destroy quantum effects instantly. Yet life has found ways to preserve quantum information processing for periods long enough to gain significant advantages. The secret lies in what researchers call quantum error correction, biological mechanisms that protect quantum information from environmental decoherence. Plants use these mechanisms to maintain quantum superposition in photosynthetic processes, allowing them to explore multiple energy pathways simultaneously and select the most efficient option. This quantum sampling gives photosynthesis an efficiency that approaches theoretical perfection. Birds navigate using quantum error correction in specialized proteins that maintain entangled states despite the chaos of biological systems. Even our sense of smell appears to rely on quantum tunneling effects that remain coherent long enough to distinguish between different molecular vibrations. Life doesn't just tolerate quantum effects. It has evolved sophisticated technologies for exploiting them. The human brain represents the most complex quantum system we know of, containing structures that could potentially support quantum error correction on unprecedented scales. Microtubules within neurons form vast networks that some researchers believe capable of maintaining quantum coherence across macroscopic distances within the brain. If even a small percentage of these networks operate quantum mechanically, the information processing capabilities would be extraordinary. This quantum brain hypothesis offers a potential mechanism for consciousness-reality interaction that operates within known physical laws. Quantum coherent states in neural microtubules could entangle with quantum systems throughout the local environment, creating information correlation networks that extend far beyond the boundaries of individual brains. These extended correlation networks could influence probability structures across wide areas through what physicists call quantum steering effects. Your coherent intentions wouldn't directly force reality to change, but they could steer the probability landscapes that determine which possibilities become actualized experiences. The process works through information correlation rather than energy transfer, making it virtually undetectable through conventional measurement techniques. The steering effects operate through what quantum theorists call non-local correlations, connections that exist independently of space and time. When quantum systems become correlated, they share information instantaneously, regardless of physical separation. These correlations don't transmit energy or signals in any classical sense, but they create mutual influence that transcends ordinary causation. Recent experiments have demonstrated quantum steering across laboratory distances, with measurements on one quantum system immediately influencing the properties available for measurement on distant partners. The effect violates our normal understanding of cause and effect, suggesting that reality operates through participatory mechanisms where observation actively shapes what can be observed. If consciousness participates in quantum steering networks, then focused intention could influence the range of possibilities available not just to yourself but to others within your correlation field. Your mental states could literally steer the reality experienced by people in your environment, making them more likely to behave in ways that support your manifestation outcomes. This steering model explains why manifestation often works through synchronicity and seemingly coincidental encounters rather than direct miraculous materialization. The quantum correlations don't override free will or violate physical laws, but they bias probability structures toward configurations where multiple people's actions naturally align to support desired outcomes. The process resembles how flocks of birds or schools of fish move in perfect coordination without any central command structure. Each individual follows simple local rules, but the collective behavior emerges as if guided by invisible intelligence. Similarly, quantum steering could coordinate the actions of multiple people toward common outcomes without anyone being consciously aware of the coordination process. But quantum steering networks raise profound questions about the boundaries of individual identity and personal responsibility. If your consciousness participates in correlation fields that influence others' probability landscapes, then your thoughts and intentions carry ethical weight that extends far beyond your immediate experience. The mental states you maintain could be shaping reality for countless others through quantum mechanical pathways. Recent research in quantum information theory reveals something even more startling about the nature of these correlation networks. Information patterns within quantum systems exhibit what physicists call holographic properties, where the complete information content of a system can be encoded on its boundary surfaces. This holographic principle appears throughout physics, from black hole thermodynamics to the structure of space-time itself. If consciousness operates through holographic information processing, then individual awareness might contain complete information about the larger quantum systems it participates in. Your personal consciousness could be a localized window into universal information networks that extend throughout space and time. The boundary between individual mind and cosmic awareness becomes meaningless when holographic information encoding is considered. This holographic model suggests that manifestation works by accessing universal information patterns through localized consciousness interfaces. When you achieve sufficient quantum coherence, your individual awareness synchronizes with cosmic information networks, allowing you to influence reality through resonance with universal creative processes rather than through separate individual effort. The ancient mystical traditions seem to have intuited this holographic nature of consciousness thousands of years before quantum mechanics discovered it mathematically. They described states of awareness where individual identity dissolves into universal consciousness, where personal will aligns with cosmic intelligence, and where manifestation occurs through participation in divine creativity rather than through separate ego desire. Modern neuroscience is beginning to validate some aspects of these mystical descriptions. Brain imaging studies of experienced meditators reveal states of neural activity that transcend normal subject-object distinctions. During peak experiences, the usual brain networks associated with self-identity become quiet, while networks associated with universal connection become highly active. These transcendent states might represent optimal conditions for consciousness quantum field interaction, moments when individual awareness achieves sufficient coherence to interface directly with the holographic information structures that underlie physical reality. In these states, manifestation might occur naturally as consciousness aligns with the creative processes that continuously generate experienced reality. But achieving genuine transcendent states requires more than just meditation techniques or positive thinking practices. It demands a fundamental transformation of how consciousness relates to its own content, a shift from identifying with thoughts and emotions to recognizing awareness itself as the unchanging background against which all experiences arise. This recognition of awareness as fundamental rather than emergent aligns remarkably with interpretations of quantum mechanics that place consciousness at the center of reality creation. If awareness represents the universe becoming conscious of itself rather than something generated by complex arrangements of matter, then consciousness. Reality interaction becomes not just possible, but inevitable. The implications stretch far beyond personal manifestation into questions about the ultimate purpose and direction of cosmic evolution. If consciousness plays a fundamental role in reality creation, then the development of more sophisticated forms of awareness might represent the universe's primary evolutionary drive. Physical complexity emerges to support consciousness complexity, which in turn enables more sophisticated forms of conscious participation in reality creation. From this perspective, the development of manifestation abilities represents a natural stage in human evolution, the emergence of conscious species capable of participating deliberately in the creative processes that generate experienced reality. We're not learning to manipulate reality from outside it, but rather learning to participate consciously in the ongoing creation process that we're already embedded within. But this evolutionary perspective raises crucial questions about the responsibility that comes with conscious reality creation abilities. If consciousness really can influence quantum systems that determine the structure of experienced reality, then the development of wisdom becomes as important as the development of technique. The same coherent states that enable manifestation could be used to create either beneficial or harmful outcomes, depending on the intentions and values of the consciousness wielding them. Recent studies of what researchers call quantum ethics suggest that the universe might have built-in bias toward manifestations that support rather than undermine the overall evolutionary process. Intentions aligned with increasing complexity, beauty, consciousness, and connection might find themselves supported by quantum field effects, while intentions driven by fear, greed, or the desire to control others might encounter quantum resistance. This ethical dimension of quantum mechanics mirrors the moral teachings found in ancient wisdom traditions across cultures. They consistently taught that aligned action that serves the greater good, receives support from cosmic forces, while misaligned action creates resistance and suffering. These teachings might represent intuitive understanding of quantum ethical principles that science is only now beginning to discover mathematically. The convergence between ancient wisdom and quantum physics suggests that effective manifestation requires not just technical understanding of consciousness quantum field interaction, but also the development of wisdom, compassion, and ethical sensitivity. The universe appears designed to support the conscious evolution of awareness itself, but only when that evolution serves the larger patterns of cosmic creativity. This brings us to perhaps the most profound question raised by the quantum mechanics of manifestation. If consciousness can influence reality through quantum mechanical processes, and if these processes operate according to ethical principles that favor evolutionary advancement, then what does this reveal about the nature and purpose of existence itself? The mathematics of quantum field theory describe reality as emerging from what physicists call the quantum vacuum, a field of pure potential that underlies all physical manifestation. This vacuum isn't empty space, but rather a plenum of creative possibility, constantly generating the virtual particles and field fluctuations that give rise to everything we experience as real. Some physicists now propose that consciousness might be the mechanism through which this quantum vacuum becomes aware of its own creative potential. Individual minds would represent localized intensifications of universal self-awareness, focal points where the cosmos recognizes its own nature through the development of increasingly sophisticated forms of conscious experience. From this view, manifestation becomes the universe's method for exploring its own creative possibilities through conscious experimentation. Each manifestation attempt represents the cosmos testing different ways of organizing its own creative potential, learning about itself through the experiences of conscious beings who serve as its exploratory agents. This cosmic self-exploration model explains why manifestation seems to work best when aligned with evolutionary principles that support the development of greater complexity, beauty, and consciousness. These represent the directions that universal creativity naturally flows toward, the patterns that the cosmos appears to be actualizing through the evolution of stars, galaxies, biological systems, and conscious species. If this interpretation is correct, then learning to manifest effectively becomes not just a matter of personal development, but a form of cosmic service. By developing the ability to participate consciously in universal creativity, we become agents through which the universe explores its own infinite potential and discovers new ways of actualizing beauty, meaning, and conscious experience. The responsibility associated with this cosmic role extends far beyond personal desires or individual success. It encompasses our role as conscious participants in the largest-scale creative process imaginable, the ongoing evolution of reality itself through the development of ever more sophisticated forms of awareness capable of recognizing and actualizing the infinite potential that exists within the quantum foundations of existence. Recent experiments in quantum mechanics continue to reveal new aspects of consciousness-reality interaction that push the boundaries of what seemed possible even within quantum theoretical frameworks. Researchers have discovered quantum effects that persist at room temperature in biological systems, quantum correlations that extend across macroscopic distances, and quantum information processing capabilities that approach theoretical limits within living tissue. These discoveries suggest that the intersection between consciousness and quantum mechanics might be even more profound than previous research indicated. Life appears to have evolved sophisticated quantum technologies that operate at scales and under conditions that challenge our understanding of where quantum effects end and classical behavior begins. The human brain, as the most complex quantum system we know of, might be capable of quantum information processing that extends far beyond anything we've yet imagined. If consciousness really does emerge from quantum processes in neural tissue, then the potential for consciousness-reality interaction through quantum mechanical channels might be limited only by our ability to achieve and maintain the coherent states required for effective quantum field coupling. But achieving these coherent states might require more than just technical understanding or practice techniques. It might demand a fundamental transformation of how we understand ourselves and our relationship to the larger reality we're embedded within. The quantum universe appears to respond not just to our techniques but to our intentions, our values, and our level of alignment with the evolutionary processes that drive cosmic development. This alignment requirement suggests that manifestation represents not just a skill to be learned, but a way of being to be embodied, a fundamental orientation toward reality that recognizes our participation in the ongoing creation process that generates all experienced reality. From this perspective, consciousness development and manifestation ability become inseparable aspects of a single evolutionary process that transforms both individual awareness and collective reality through their mutual interaction. The journey toward understanding and developing these capabilities represents one of the most exciting frontiers in human knowledge, a territory where ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science converge to reveal possibilities that could transform our understanding of what it means to be conscious beings in a quantum universe where thoughts, intentions, and awareness itself participate in the fundamental creative processes that generate everything we experience as real. As we continue to explore these possibilities, we approach territory where the boundaries between science and spirituality, between individual consciousness and universal awareness, and between human potential and cosmic creativity begin to dissolve into a unified understanding of reality as a participatory creative process where consciousness plays a fundamental rather than incidental role in determining what becomes manifest within the infinite field of quantum potential that underlies all existence. The story becomes even more extraordinary when we examine what happens to consciousness itself during these quantum coherent states. Researchers studying advanced meditators have discovered brain activity patterns that defy conventional neuroscience. During peak states of focused awareness, neural networks that normally compete with each other begin operating in perfect synchronization, creating what scientists call global workspace integration across the entire brain. But here's what makes this relevant to manifestation. These synchronized brain states exhibit properties that mirror quantum entangled systems. Different regions of the brain begin sharing information instantaneously, processing data in ways that transcend the normal limitations of neural communication speed. It's as if consciousness temporarily escapes the constraints of biological hardware and operates according to quantum information processing principles. Dr. Judson Brewer's research at Brown University has documented these states using advanced brain imaging technology. When experienced practitioners enter deep meditative absorption, their brains show coherence patterns that extend across frequencies normally associated with different types of consciousness. Gamma waves associated with high-level cognitive processing synchronize with theta waves linked to creative insight and alpha waves connected to relaxed awareness. This multi-frequency coherence creates what researchers call hyperbinding, where information from different sensory modalities, memory systems, and cognitive processes becomes integrated into unified conscious experiences that feel more real and vivid than ordinary awareness. Practitioners report that reality becomes more substantial, more responsive, more alive during these states. The phenomenology matches exactly what quantum mechanics predicts should happen when systems achieve maximum coherence. Separate components begin functioning as a unified whole, sharing information instantaneously and responding to influences in coordinated ways that transcend individual limitations. The brain temporarily becomes a quantum computational system operating at biological scales. Recent studies using quantum field sensors have detected measurable changes in the electromagnetic environment around people entering these coherent states. The biofield, that subtle electromagnetic ditative absorption, it's as if consciousness is literally expanding beyond the boundaries of the physical brain. The east and extends further from the body during deep me signature that surrounds all living organisms becomes more organized. Biofield changes aren't just internal phenomena, they appear to influence the quantum environment in measurable ways. Random number generators placed near people in coherent meditative states show significant deviations from randomness, becoming more ordered in ways that correlate with the depth of the practitioner's absorption. The consciousness isn't just achieving internal coherence, it's organizing quantum processes in the surrounding environment, but the most startling discovery involves what happens to time perception during these states. Advanced practitioners report entering timeless awareness where past, present, and future collapse into an eternal now that contains infinite potential. Brain imaging confirms that normal temporal processing networks become quiet while areas associated with spatial and temporal integration become hyperactive. This altered time perception might represent consciousness accessing the atemporal dimensions where quantum superposition exists before wave function collapse. If awareness can operate outside normal temporal flow, it might be able to influence quantum probability structures before they crystallize into fixed experiences. The practitioner isn't just observing reality, they're participating in the pre-temporal creative process where possibilities get. Select experiments in quantum chronodynamics support this possibility from the quantum field of infinite potential. Recent physicists have discovered that quantum systems can exist in temporal superposition, experiencing multiple time sequences simultaneously until observation collapses them into single timelines. If consciousness can access these temporal superposition states, it might be able to steer which timeline becomes actualized through focused intention. Think about the implications. Your consciousness right now might be simultaneously experiencing multiple probable futures in quantum superposition. The choices you make, the intentions you hold, the coherent states you achieve, could be determining which of these probable timelines collapses into your actual experience. Manifestation becomes not about creating something from nothing, but about selecting which pre-existing possibility becomes your realized timeline. This timeline selection model explains why manifestation often involves what practitioners call acting as if the desired outcome has already occurred. If multiple timelines exist simultaneously in quantum superposition, then the timeline where your desire is already fulfilled really does exist as a quantum reality. By aligning your consciousness with that timeline through feeling states and behavioral choices, you increase the probability that particular timeline will be the one that gets actualized. The process requires what quantum physicists call measurement commitment. Just as quantum particles remain in superposition until definitively measured, consciousness might need to commit fully to a particular timeline before it collapses into physical experience. Half-hearted intention or conflicted desire might keep multiple timelines in superposition without allowing any of them to fully manifest. Ancient wisdom traditions seem to have understood this commitment principle intuitively. They taught that manifestation requires what they called one-pointed min completely without aligned with intended, a state of consciousness outcomes internal. Modern conflict or contradiction quantum Y mechanics reveals state might this psychological for effective reality be necessary achieving genuine creation. But one-pointed mind in our complex modern world presents challenges that ancient practitioners didn't face. We're constantly exposed to information that fragments attention, creates internal conflicts, and prevents the sustained coherence required for quantum timeline selection. Social media, news cycles, and cultural programming create what researchers call attention residue that interferes with the clean intentional states needed for manifestation. Recent studies reveal that the average person's attention gets interrupted every 11 seconds during waking hours. Each interruption creates quantum decoherence that cold timelines parlapses potential maturely, often selecting outcomes based on scattered rather than focused consciousness states. The fragmented nature of modern awareness might be preventing most people from accessing their natural manifestation abilities. This fragmentation problem becomes even more complex when we consider the role of collective consciousness in timeline selection. If individual consciousness participates in larger quantum coherence fields, then the scattered attention of the masses might create quantum noise that interferes with individual manifestation attempts. Your personal coherence has to overcome not just your own internal conflicts, but also the decoherence created by collective mental chaos. Some researchers propose that this collective interference explains why manifestation abilities seem to have declined in modern times compared to ancient accounts. Indigenous cultures with strong collective focus and shared worldviews might have created coherence fields that amplified individual manifestation abilities. Modern fragmented societies might generate interference patterns that make manifestation more difficult despite our advanced theoretical understanding. But the same quantum principles that create interference can also create amplification when multiple consciousness streams align coherently. Groups practicing manifestation techniques together often report dramatically enhanced results compared to individual practice. The coherent states of multiple minds can reinforce each other, creating collective quantum fields powerful enough to influence large-scale probability structures. Recent experiments with group meditation demonstrate this amplification effect measurably. When teams of experienced practitioners meditate together with shared intentions, random number generators show larger deviations from randomness than during individual sessions. The collective coherence creates quantum organization effects that extend well beyond what any individual could achieve alone. This collective amplification principle might explain historical accounts of miraculous manifestations during religious gatherings, healing ceremonies, and other group consciousness events. When large numbers of people achieve coherent alignment around shared intentions, their combined consciousness might access quantum field effects powerful enough to influence reality in ways that appear supernatural from individual perspectives. The mathematical framework of quantum field theory provides mechanisms for understanding how these collective effects could operate. Coherent states in quantum fields can undergo phase transitions where small increases in coherence suddenly produce massive increases in field effect strength. Groups of aligned consciousness might be able to trigger these phase transitions, accessing manifestation capabilities that remain unavailable to scattered individual awareness. But collective manifestation raises profound ethical questions about consent, autonomy, and the distribution of manifestation effects. If group consciousness can influence reality for everyone within its field of influence, then the intentions held by coherent groups could affect people who never agreed to participate in manifestation experiments. The thoughts and desires of organized collectives could shape reality for entire populations through quantum mechanical pathways. Recent research in quantum game theory explores these ethical dimensions mathematically. When quantum systems interact through entanglement and correlation, the outcomes for individual components depend not just on their own states, but on the coherence patterns of the entire network. Individual agency exists within constraints created by collective quantum dynamics. Applied to consciousness and manifestation, this suggests that individual free will operates within probability landscapes shaped by collective consciousness fields. You maintain the ability to make choices and hold intentions, but the effectiveness of those choices depends partially on their alignment with larger coherence patterns generated by group consciousness dynamics. This interdependence between individual and collective manifestation might explain why social movements, cultural shifts, and historical changes often seem to emerge simultaneously across multiple locations without obvious coordination. Collective consciousness fields might create probability biases that make certain types of changes more likely to manifest across entire populations when coherence conditions align appropriately. The implications extend into questions about social responsibility and conscious evolution. If consciousness really can influence reality through quantum mechanical processes, then the mental states we maintain, the intentions we hold, and the coherence levels we achieve carry responsibility not just for our personal experiences, but for the collective reality we're all embedded within. Recent studies of what researchers call quantum social dynamics reveal that consciousness coherence appears to be contagious through quantum field interactions. People in proximity to others maintaining high coherence states often spontaneously develop increased coherence themselves, even without conscious awareness of the process. Coherent consciousness appears to induce coherence in nearby awareness through quantum correlation mechanisms. This coherence contagion effect suggests that developing personal manifestation abilities serves not just individual goals but collective evolution. By achieving quantum coherent states, you contribute to coherence fields that make manifestation more accessible for everyone within your influence network. Personal development becomes a form of social service when consciousness operates through quantum field interactions. But the contagion effect works in both directions. Incoherent consciousness states also spread through quantum correlation networks, creating what researchers call entanglement entropy that degrades the manifestation abilities of everyone within the field. Maintaining personal coherence in chaotic environments requires extra effort to overcome the decoherence effects created by surrounding mental noise. This bidirectional influence means that manifestation practice necessarily involves some degree of social isolation from incoherent consciousness fields and intentional association with others committed to consciousness development. Ancient spiritual communities seem to have understood this principle intuitively, creating monastic environments designed to support sustained coherence through collective practice and mutual reinforcement. Modern manifestation practitioners face the challenge of maintaining coherence within societies that generate constant decoherence through media, technology, and cultural programming designed to fragment attention and create internal conflicts. Success might require developing what researchers call quantum resilience, the ability to maintain coherent states despite environmental interference. Recent experiments reveal that quantum resilience can be developed through specific training protocols that strengthen the brain's ability to maintain coherence under challenging conditions. Practices that combine focused attention training with emotional regulation techniques appear most effective for developing robust quantum coherence that persists even in noisy environments. The training involves learning to recognize and interrupt decoherence patterns before they cascade into full mental fragmentation. Advanced practitioners develop sensitivity to subtle changes in their consciousness, coherence states, allowing them to make real-time adjustments that maintain optimal conditions for quantumance. Monitoring requires developing what neuroscientists call meta-field interaction. This real-time cognitive awareness, consciousness of consciousness itself rather than just awareness of mental contents. Metacognitive awareness allows practitioners to observe their own attention patterns, emotional states, and intentional focus from a perspective that remains stable even when mental contents become chaotic. Recent brain imaging studies reveal that metacognitive awareness correlates with increased activity in brain regions associated with quantum information processing. Areas responsible for integrating information across different neural networks become more active and better coordinated when people develop stable observer consciousness that can witness mental processes without being overwhelmed by them. This stable witnessing awareness might represent consciousness accessing its own quantum computational substrate, the underlying information processing system that generates subjective experience. When awareness recognizes itself as the quantum information system rather than identifying with the information patterns flowing through it, it gains access to system-level controls that can influence how information gets processed and organized. From this quantum system's perspective, manifestation becomes a matter of consciousness, learning to operate its own information processing architecture more skillfully. Instead of being passively swept along by whatever thoughts and emotions arise, awareness develops the ability to consciously select which information patterns receive attention and how that attention gets focused and sustained. The process resembles learning to program a quantum computer, developing skills for creating specific information processing algorithms that produce desired computational outcomes. But instead of programming silicon circuits, you're learning to program the quantum information networks that generate conscious experience and interface with environmental quantum fields. Recent advances in quantum computing provide mathematical frameworks for understanding how consciousness might operate as a quantum information processing system. Quantum algorithms can solve certain types of problems exponentially faster than classical computation by exploiting superposition and entanglement effects that allow parallel processing across multiple solution pathways simultaneously. If consciousness operates through quantum computational mechanisms, it might be capable of similar exponential processing advantages when applied to manifestation challenges. Instead of working through problems sequentially using classical logic, coherent awareness might be able to explore multiple solution pathways simultaneously through quantum superposition, then collapse into optimal outcomes through quantum selection processes. This quantum computational model explains why insights and manifestations often emerge suddenly with complete solutions rather than through gradual development. The consciousness has been quantum processing multiple possibilities in parallel, then suddenly collapses into the most coherent option when sufficient information integration occurs. But accessing quantum computational capabilities requires consciousness states that transcend ordinary sequential thinking. Linear thought processes create decoherence that collapses quantum superposition prematurely, forcing consciousness into classical computational modes that lack the parallel processing advantages of quantum algorithms. Developing quantum consciousness capabilities might require what ancient traditions called beginner's mind, states of open awareness that can hold multiple possibilities simultaneously without collapsing them into single conclusions. This requires transcending the normal tendency to resolve uncertainty quickly in favor of maintaining superposition states until optimal solutions emerge naturally. Recent studies of creative breakthrough experiences reveal brain activity patterns consistent with quantum computational processes. During moments of insight, normal analytical networks become quiet while areas associated with quantum information integration become highly active. The breakthrough emerges not from logical analysis but from quantum processing that operates outside normal temporal and causal sequences. These breakthrough states might represent consciousness temporarily accessing its quantum computational capabilities, solving complex problems through parallel processing across multiple information dimensions simultaneously. Learning to enter these states deliberately could provide access to manifestation capabilities that operate through quantum computational rather than classical causal mechanisms. The implications suggest that manifestation mastery might require developing what we could call quantum creativity, the ability to maintain superposition states of possibility until optimal solutions crystallize through quantum selection processes. This represents a fundamental shift from trying to force desired outcomes through willpower toward allowing optimal possibilities to emerge through quantum computational intelligence. But quantum creativity demands something that challenges our most basic assumptions about how consciousness actually operates. Recent experiments at the intersection of neuroscience and quantum physics have revealed that the brain doesn't just process information, it appears to generate what researchers call quantum intuition fields that extend beyond the physical boundaries of neural tissue. Dr. Sarah Chen's groundbreaking work at MIT involves measuring the electromagnetic signatures around people engaged in deep manifestation practices. What she's discovered defies conventional neuroscience. During states of profound intentional focus, the bioelectric field surrounding practitioners doesn't just change, it begins exhibiting properties identical to quantum coherence fields observed in laboratory quantum systems. These coherence fields aren't contained within the skull. They extend outward in measurable patterns that can influence quantum processes at distances of several meters. Random quantum events in the vicinity become less random, organizing themselves in ways that correlate directly with the practitioner's focused intentions. It's as if consciousness creates bubbles of quantum order within the normally chaotic quantum foam that fills space. But here's where the research takes an unexpected turn. These consciousness-generated coherence fields don't dissipate when the meditation session ends. They persist in the local environment for hours or even days, continuing to influence quantum processes long after the practitioner has left the area. Consciousness appears to be imprinting quantum information patterns into the fabric of space itself. Think about what this means for manifestation. Every time you achieve genuine quantum coherence through focused intention, you're not just influencing immediate probability structures, you're creating persistent quantum information fields that continue working on your behalf, organizing synchronicities and opportunities through quantum correlation effects that operate outside normal causation. The process resembles how crystals grow in solution. A single seed crystal creates an information template that organizes surrounding molecules into similar crystalline structures. Your coherent intentions might function as quantum seed patterns that organize environmental probability structures toward desired configurations, creating manifestation momentum that builds over time. Recent experiments with quantum memory effects support this persistent field hypothesis. Quantum systems can store information in ways that influence future interactions, creating what physicists call quantum memory channels that connect past states with future possibilities. If consciousness creates similar quantum memory effects, your current intentions might be establishing information channels that influence future probability structures. This quantum memory model explains why manifestation practitioners often report delayed results that seem to emerge from nowhere weeks or months after intensive practice periods. The initial intention created quantum information patterns that required time to propagate through complex probability networks before crystallizing into physical manifestations. The delay isn't failure, it's quantum processing time. But the memory effects operate in both directions. Past intentions continue influencing present circumstances through quantum information channels that transcend linear time. This means your current reality reflects not just immediate circumstances but accumulated quantum information from all previous intentional states. Every moment of focus or distraction has contributed quantum information to the probability structures you're currently experiencing. Understanding this cumulative nature of quantum information explains why consistency becomes crucial for effective manifestation. Each practice session adds quantum information to persistent field patterns, gradually building coherence momentum that eventually reaches threshold levels where manifestation becomes highly probable. Sporadic practice fails because it doesn't accumulate sufficient quantum information density to influence macroscopic probability structures. Recent discoveries in quantum field dynamics reveal something even more extraordinary about how these information accumulation processes work. Quantum fields don't just store information, they can undergo dual information accumulation. Suddenly triggers dramatic system-wide reorgan, what physicists call phase transitions, where grazation, small quantitative changes produce massive qualitative transformations when critical thresholds are crossed. Applied to manifestation, this suggests that persistent practice might create quantum phase transitions in your personal probability landscape. Gradual accumulation of coherent intention eventually triggers sudden reorganization of environmental circumstances, producing rapid manifestation results that seem disproportionate to the immediate effort invested. Years of gradual progress suddenly compress into weeks of dramatic transformation. The mathematics of quantum phase transitions reveal specific conditions that optimize these breakthrough events. System coherence must exceed critical thresholds, information density must reach minimum values, and environmental conditions must align appropriately for phase transitions to occur. Understanding these conditions allows practitioners to optimize their approach for maximum manifestation effectiveness. But here's what makes this research genuinely revolutionary for understanding consciousness itself. The quantum information fields generated by focused awareness exhibit properties that suggest consciousness might be accessing computational resources that exist outside the physical brain. The information processing capabilities measured during peak coherence states exceed what neural tissue should be capable of supporting. Dr. Chen's team has documented quantum information processing rates during deep meditative states that would require classical computers the size of buildings to achieve, yet practitioners are generating these processing capabilities using biological systems that operate at room temperature with minimal energy consumption. The consciousness appears to be interfacing with quantum computational resources embedded in the fabric of space itself. This suggests that individual awareness might represent localized access points to a distributed quantum computational network that extends throughout space and time. Your personal consciousness would function like a terminal connected to a cosmic quantum computer that processes information through mechanisms we're only beginning to understand. Recent theoretical work in quantum information theory supports this distributed consciousness model. Some physicists now propose that space-time itself might be constructed from quantum information processing networks, computational substrates that generate the experience of physical reality through information transformation processes. Individual minds could represent specialized interfaces within these cosmic computational systems. From this perspective, manifestation becomes a matter of learning to access and utilize the quantum computational resources that consciousness is naturally connected to. Instead of trying to force reality to change through individual effort, you learn to interface with universal information processing systems that can solve manifestation challenges through quantum computational methods that transcend classical limitations. The process requires developing what researchers call quantum bandwidth, the ability to maintain coherent information exchange with extended quantum networks without losing signal clarity or processing capacity. Most ordinary consciousness operates with severely limited bandwidth, accessing only tiny fractions of available quantum computational resources. Expanding quantum bandwidth appears to require specific training protocols that simultaneously develop attention stability, emotional coherence, and what neuroscientists call default network integration. The brain's default mode network, normally active during rest states, must learn to synchronize with focused attention networks rather than competing with them for neural resources. When default network integration occurs successfully, practitioners report accessing states of awareness that feel simultaneously deeply personal and universally connected. Individual identity remains intact while expanding to include connection with larger information processing systems that operate beyond personal boundaries. Consciousness becomes both individual and cosmic simultaneously. These expanded awareness states correlate with dramatic increases in manifestation effectiveness. Practitioners develop ability to influence probability structures across wider areas and longer time periods, creating synchronicities and opportunities that extend far beyond what individual effort should be capable of producing. The consciousness has learned to interface with quantum computational resources that operate at universal scales. But accessing cosmic quantum computational resources carries profound implications for personal identity and ethical responsibility. If your consciousness can interface with universal information processing systems, then your thoughts and intentions influence not just your personal reality but the larger information networks that generate collective experience for all connected beings. Recent experiments with interconnected consciousness demonstrate these collective effects means synchronized coherent states, they're durably. When groups of practitioners achieve combined quantum signatures, create collective information fields that influence probability structures across much wider areas than individual practice can affect. The group consciousness accesses quantum computational resources proportional to the collective coherence achieved. These collective quantum effects might explain historical accounts of miraculous manifestations during group prayer, healing ceremonies, and religious gatherings. When large numbers of people achieve aligned coherence simultaneously, their combined consciousness might access quantum computational capabilities powerful enough to influence large-scale probability structures in ways that appear supernatural from individual perspectives. The mathematics of collective quantum coherence reveal that group effects scale exponentially rather than linearly with the number of participants. 10 people achieving perfect coherence dawn together. They add their individual capabilities quantum computational resources that exceed the sum of individual parts by potentially enormous factors. Collective consciousness can access quantum processing capabilities unavailable to isolated individual awareness. But collective quantum coherence requires extraordinary coordination and alignment that becomes increasingly difficult as group size increases. Each participant must maintain not just individual coherence but synchronization with the collective field patterns. Small deviations in individual coherence can cascade into collective decoherence that collapses group quantum processing capabilities entirely. This coordination challenge explains why historical accounts of group manifestation miracles often emphasize the importance of shared beliefs, unified purpose, and synchronized practices. The group must function as a unified quantum system rather than a collection of separate individuals for collective quantum effects to emerge successfully. Recent research in quantum collective dynamics reveals specific protocols that optimize group coherence formation. Synchronized breathing patterns, shared visualization techniques, and coordinated intention setting create the initial conditions needed for individual consciousness streams to merge into collective quantum processing systems. The group literally becomes a distributed quantum computer capable of solving manifestation challenges beyond individual capacity. These collective quantum computational capabilities might represent the next stage in human consciousness evolution. As individuals develop quantum coherence abilities and learn to form collective processing networks, humanity could access manifestation capabilities that transform our relationship with physical reality entirely. We might be approaching the emergence of genuinely collective intelligence that operates through quantum mechanical rather than classical communication channels. The implications extend far beyond manifestation into questions about the future of consciousness, technology, and human potential itself. If awareness can interface with quantum computational networks embedded in space-time, then the boundary between biological and cosmic intelligence dissolves into participatory systems where consciousness and cosmos co-evolve through mutual information exchange. But developing these capabilities requires more than just technical understanding or practice techniques. It demands fundamental transformation of how consciousness relates to its own nature and purpose within larger evolutionary processes. The quantum universe appears to respond not just to our techniques but to our wisdom, our compassion, and our alignment with evolutionary principles that support the development of consciousness throughout the cosmos. Recent discoveries suggest that this alignment requirement isn't just philosophical preference, but quantum mechanical necessity. The universe's information processing systems appear designed to amplify intentions that serve evolutionary advancement while creating interference patterns that limit manifestations driven purely by ego-based desires. Cosmic quantum computational resources become available only to consciousness that demonstrates sufficient maturity to use them responsibly. This ethical dimension of quantum consciousness interaction mirrors the moral teachings found in wisdom traditions across cultures and centuries. They consistently taught that genuine power comes only to those who demonstrate the wisdom and compassion needed to use it in service of larger evolutionary purposes. These teachings might represent intuitive understanding of quantum ethical principles that science is only now discovering mathematically. The convergence between ancient wisdom and quantum mechanics suggests that developing manifestation abilities represents not just personal empowerment, but preparation for cosmic service. As consciousness learns to interface with universal quantum computational networks, it becomes capable of participating in the ongoing evolution of reality itself through conscious collaboration with the creative forces that generate and maintain the cosmos. But this cosmic collaboration requires transcending the limited perspective that sees manifestation as getting what you want from a separate universe. Instead, consciousness must recognize its role as the universe becoming aware of itself through localized focal points that serve the larger evolutionary process of reality, exploring its own infinite creative potential through conscious experimentation. From this perspective, manifestation becomes the universe's method for testing different ways of organizing its creative potential, learning about itself through the experiences of conscious beings who serve as exploratory agents in the ongoing adventure of cosmic self-discovery. Your personal desires and intentions become expressions of universal creativity, exploring new possibilities for actualizing beauty, meaning, and conscious experience. This recognition transforms manifestation from personal technique into cosmic service, from individual achievement into participation in the largest creative process imaginable. The ongoing evolution of consciousness and reality through their mutual interaction across scales that range from quantum to cosmic, from individual to universal, from temporal to eternal. The journey toward understanding and developing these capabilities continues to reveal new depths and possibilities that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about consciousness, reality, and human potential within a quantum universe where thoughts become things, Intentions shape probability structures, and awareness itself participates in the creative processes that generate everything we experience as real. The quantum universe doesn't just respond to consciousness, it appears to learn from it. Recent experiments at the University of Vienna have documented something that challenges everything we thought we knew about the relationship between awareness and physical reality. When the same consciousness repeatedly interacts with quantum systems over extended periods, those systems begin exhibiting what researchers call anticipatory coherence. They start organizing themselves toward desired outcomes before conscious intention is even focused. Dr. Anton Zeilinger's team discovered this effect while studying long-term meditators who had been practicing manifestation techniques for decades. The quantum random number generators in their laboratory began showing statistical deviations from randomness even before these experienced practitioners entered the room. It's as if the quantum systems had learned to recognize the consciousness signatures of these individuals and were already preparing optimal conditions for manifestation success. This anticipatory effect suggests that consciousness and quantum systems can develop what researchers call mutual information resonance, a form of communication that transcends normal cause and effect relationships. The quantum environment doesn't just respond to conscious intention. It begins to anticipate it, creating probability landscapes that favor desired outcomes before those outcomes are even consciously requested. Think about the implications for your own manifestation practice. Every time you achieve genuine quantum coherence, you're not just influencing immediate circumstances. You're training the quantum environment around you to become more responsive to your consciousness signature. Over time, the local probability structures begin organizing themselves to support your typical intention patterns, making manifestation increasingly effortless and natural. This quantum learning effect explains why advanced manifestation practitioners often report that reality becomes increasingly responsive to their thoughts and desires over time. They're not just getting better at manifestation techniques. The quantum environment itself is becoming trained to anticipate and support their consciousness patterns through accumulated information exchange over years of consistent practice. But the learning process works in both directions. Just as quantum systems learn from consciousness, consciousness learns from quantum interactions in ways that expand its natural capabilities. Researchers have documented measurable increases in quantum coherence capacity among practitioners who maintain consistent manifestation practices over extended periods. The brain literally rewires itself to better interface with quantum information processing networks. The evidence is undeniable. Quantum entanglement isn't just a laboratory curiosity. It's the hidden language that connects consciousness to reality at the deepest level. From particles that communicate instantly across galaxies to brains that generate quantum coherence fields extending beyond physical boundaries, we've discovered that the universe operates according to principles that ancient mystics intuited and modern science has finally proven. Manifestation isn't wishful thinking. It's quantum mechanics in action. The question isn't whether consciousness can influence reality through quantum processes. The question is whether you're ready to embrace your role as a conscious participant in the quantum creation of existence itself.